The NFL's final international showcase is here. The Dolphins and Commanders in Spain. We got you covered here on this crossover Thursday.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Network. It is your teams every day. We don't just say it, we live it. And we want to thank each and every one of you for helping to make the Locked On Podcast Network now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm Kyle Krabs, host of Locked On Dolphins. He is David Harrison, host of Locked On Commanders. And we have you covered here for this final international showcase. Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. David, we last did one of these in 2023. How's it going? It's great to see you.
It's going really well, man. It's great to see you too. I remember that game vividly. And, I had thought that the next time we did one of these, we would be able to talk about that last game being an anomaly, and this game probably isn't going to go that way. And while Tyreek Hill is not going to be out there to do his thing, and while Van Ginkel isn't going to be out there to do his thing, outside of that, there might be some similarities in this game, the way that the Washington Commanders have been going this year. We'll see.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, kind of the tale of what 2024 was for both of these teams, and then kind of the early glimpses of both teams, kind of not the way that it's expected for Washington. I think Miami has been the worst case scenario in a lot of ways. And then they managed to put together a full team effort against Atlanta. They got a letdown on a short week against Baltimore, but then they bounced back and they beat the Bills for the first time in 8 games. And I think you can feel that around this Dolphins team is one of the big stories coming in is the momentum off of a game like that, in which they ran for 197 yards. Mike McDaniel did the thing he very rarely does, which is call more runs than passes as a whole. And I know a lot of that is game script dependent, but he is really invested in kind of controlling the flow of the game. And I think that's something the Dolphins are certainly looking to capitalize on with that momentum and roll it into another matchup where obviously Washington going to be without Daron Payne in this game from that well-documented scrap with Amon-Ra St. Brown. But I guess from your perspective in Washington, what's the big story right now coming into this game?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just been a snake-bitten season for the Washington Commanders, right? Like, there's an old saying that when people show you who they are, believe them. Well, to translate that to this NFL season, the 2025 NFL season has shown the Commanders that they're not interested in the Commanders being a part of any serious conversations here. And a lot of fans here are thinking that, well, the team needs to believe him, shut it down, shut Jaden Daniels down for the rest of the week. He's not going to play in this week's game. Didn't even make the trip out to Spain. Because of that dislocated elbow that he suffered a couple weeks ago. Terry McLaurin has only been present for like 4 games this season. They lost one of their starting edge rushers, their best edge setter, Dietrich Wise Jr. in the second game of the year, starting running back in the second game of the year, and the list just goes on and on and on. So that's really just kind of been like this snake-bitten thing. And then now Daron Payne, not an injury, right? But he's still going to be out of the game, and that's going to be crucial. But I think the biggest story, Kyle, and the biggest thing that's going to impact this game this weekend from a Commander standpoint is Dan Quinn relieving Joe Witt Jr., his defensive coordinator, of his play calling duties and taking those over himself. So, the scheme itself overall is going to stay the same. A lot of cover 3, fire zone type of stuff like that. But the driver's different now, right? So the vehicle is the same essentially, but the driver is going to be different. And that can absolutely matter. And that's what Dan Quinn is hoping to do, is just bring a little bit of a spark to his defense, maybe rejuvenate some guys, maybe get some guys in some better positions to make plays. But at the end of the day, speaking of Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu, 2 of their linebackers and leaders in the locker room today, they both also said, like, it's on the players to eventually execute it. The way Frankie Louvu put it was bring the play to life. You can call cover 3, you can call whatever you want, but if, this guy who's supposed to be in this zone or this spot just doesn't do his assignment, it's really not going to matter who's calling the play. It's going to matter who executes it. But we would be wrong to not, count in there the person communicating the play, choosing when the right time to call a blitz or to call this coverage or whatever does absolutely matter. So there is an influence there, certainly, but the players are not losing sight of the fact that they also have a major role in whether or not this is successful.
Yeah, and I think the familiarity between these two coaches makes that a very compelling talking point for this game, right? Where I know both Dan Quinn and Mike McDaniel on Wednesday during their press availabilities talked about their relationship with each other and the overlap that they had in spots. And I think it does put more of the pressure in a game like this on the players, where the familiarity with the coaches is there. So now it's, okay, you might know or have a better idea of a tendency or maybe what kind of call is coming here. Can you execute it? And I
Yeah.
think that's the thing for Miami. You look at what their run game has been, for example, and they've loaded up. They've gone more 6 offensive linemen heavy. They've done
Mhm.
they didn't do that at all in Mike McDaniel's first 3 years here in Miami. But this is a matchup against a Washington front that's got some dense guys on the defensive front, and Miami's pretty light up front.
Mhm.
I think that just puts that much more amplification on guys like Wagner and Luvu against you're probably going to have efforts at misdirection and try to win with speed to the perimeter from Miami.
Yeah.
That, yeah, it's how well can you pick up on the keys and how fast can you react in a game like this, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's been a problem for this Commanders defense, especially since Dietrich Wise Jr. went out. Like Dietrich, last year the Commanders had a problem setting the edge as well, and Saquon Barkley most famously took advantage of it not once, not twice, but 3 times in that season, including the NFC Championship game. And early on, and it's hard to say really early on because it's the Giants, and this is pre-Cam Scatteraboo Giants as well, and then
Right.
the Green Bay Packers for I think it was 2.5 quarters before Dietrich got hurt. It wasn't very long, and so it's hard to really say it was getting better, but it certainly looked like it was getting better with Dietrich out there. And then once he went out, it just really wasn't the same, and that edge has become a vulnerability for the Washington Commanders again. And then just getting even deeper into it, also losing Javante Jean Baptiste, who replaced Dietrich in the starting rotation. Then you lose Dorrance Armstrong, who's not only one of your better edge setters, though not great by himself, honestly, but also your best pass rusher, leading your team in sacks when he went out with that injury. So just there's a decimated defensive line from the edge position. Interior a little bit stronger. Like even without Duron Payne, Sheldon Day has been known to be able to hold his own against guys who are even bigger than him, at least enough to be serviceable. Johnny Newton, the second-year guy out of Illinois, is going to be expected to step up and try to do something. So we'll see what kind of perimeter defense they can come up with. Again, that's something that maybe Dan Quinn can impact, and also potentially the return of safety Will Harris. He was injured early in the season as well, broken tibia, and he's been able to kind of work his way back. And they opened up his return window today. He was out there at practice. He came to Spain with the team, and we were talking a little bit before we hit record. And typically, I would usually lean on first week the window's open, probably not expecting the guy to come back, but because they flew him to Spain and deliberately opened his window here in Spain, it at least lends more credibility to the idea that he
Mhm.
might come back this weekend. And in worst case scenario, it obviously makes the Dolphins plan for what that defense could look like with Will Harris in there instead of Jeremy Reeves as a starting safety. And I will tell you, it's a much more put together defense from a communication standpoint, and that could pay big dividends across the board.
Well, we're going to look further into a lot of the matchups and personnel of this game. That's coming your way next here on this crossover Thursday on the Locked On Network. Make sure you guys stick with us. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow with over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects. And while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. So if you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs. We're finding every detail that matters. Join the free Trademaster program today. Score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. In our industry, we have to make decisions every single day. And with Prize Picks, who's one of the sponsors of today's crossover Thursday, being right means you get paid, and it's not a bad gig. Don't miss the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action than right now. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. You pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup. You can play Prize Picks anywhere that Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. The new Stacks feature is a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph Curry, for example, on points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it is good to be right. Okay, David, I'll let you take the first matchup that you think from a personnel standpoint is a potential defining variable in this football game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Washington Commanders secondary, just kind of as a whole, or lack thereof. At least from an execution standpoint, specifically against Jalen Waddle, but really just against the Miami Dolphins passing attack. Because unfortunately, we've seen this Washington Commanders give up big yards, big plays to guys who are even on practice squads for teams. Right, Seattle Seahawks had a guy on the practice squad, called him up that day for the game. He ends up hitting a 60-yard touchdown, his first career NFL touchdown, which congrats to him. That's a lifelong dream, and I'm happy for him. Hopefully he puts that ball somewhere safe. But obviously covering the Commanders is not a very fun moment for my audience or myself. But it's kind of an any given Sunday type of deal, right? Players come in and they always have the opportunity to get better. They always have the opportunity to be in a better position to make better plays. The problem here this weekend, Trey Amos, their rookie cornerback, really has been one of their most consistent players on the defensive side of the ball, which is great for him as a rookie, not so great for the defense that a rookie is one of your most consistent players necessarily. He's out for the season. He's no longer going to be available, so he's definitely not playing this game. Like I said, the potential return of Will Harris could potentially help some of that stuff that goes on over there, but now you've got to incorporate Jonathan Jones in the mix. You just lost Marshawn Lattimore the year before that for the season, so he's also out. And now you got Mikey Sainer still inside, who honestly has not necessarily been able to do some of the things he did on the outside. I know they're both cornerback positions, better than I do for the most part, that they're very different positions, even though they have similar names to them. Mikey did great outside last year. They decided to move him back inside this year. It has not gone as well. He's had some good moments, but certainly hasn't gone as well consistently, which is just kind of a microcosm of the entire defense's inability to find consistency.
Yeah, and from Miami's side of that, Jalen Waddle has been exceptional without Tyreek Hill. The production that he's been able to put on, the ironies here is we had going into the game against the Jets, or the week prior against Buffalo, it was Tyreek Hill's gone a full calendar year without a 30-yard play. And where did the explosive plays go in the offense? And the Dolphins talked a lot this offseason about, hey, we've kind of come to understand that with our personnel, everybody's game plan to play us is unique to what their identity is because of what the book is on how to defend us. Well, Tyreek Hill goes down and suddenly it feels like it's a little bit more predictable what opposing defenses are going to call based on the down and distance situation. And it has led to Mike McDaniel getting more opportunities for explosive plays with Jalen Waddle. So it's one of those cruel ironies that Tyreek goes down and lo and behold, Jalen Waddle's averaging 15 yards a catch again after he averaged like 11 yards a catch last season with Miami and had his worst season as a pro. So his elevation's been huge as far as what he's been able to do. But the way that I think Washington, if they're going to offset that individual matchup, it comes in an area that they have not scored very well this season, but it's an area that Miami has really struggled, and that's turnovers, right? It's one of the great equalizers in football, and Tua is tied for the team or the league lead in interceptions this season. He's got 13 through 10 games. It's an alarming rate in which they are turning the football over. So I know Washington is coming into this game with only a handful of takeaways on the season defensively, but Miami's been pretty good to opposing teams for, hey, if you want to have that extra possession, get that bounce of the ball. And I think that's where, whether it's Will Harris or whether it's Sandersill or it's somebody else making that big play, I believe Sandersill's got 3 of the 5 picks that Washington has this season. So all my eyes are in the Washington secondary. How tightly contested can you make those throwing windows? Because Tua will fly a little too close to the sun sometimes, and he's done it almost every game this season.
Yeah, and that's something that obviously everybody here knows about and is talking about. And unfortunately, it's, as you can tell by the numbers, it's something that the Commanders defense hasn't been able to take advantage of in other opportunities and other games against quarterbacks when they do put the ball in jeopardy. And that's really, the whole thing. Joe Witt, before he was replaced by Dan Quinn, and even Dan has talked about, that's something they preached when they first got here was, being aggressive and being intentional about going and getting the ball as a defense, then of course protecting the ball
Mhm.
as an offense. And, Marcus Mariota has done a pretty good job of protecting the football when he's been in. Jaden Daniels, when he's been healthy, has been able to do that as well for the most part. So it's just they're missing that defensive side of things. Last year, all we heard was ball is life, ball is life, ball is life. And obviously this year, it's just not happening. You know what I mean? And it's not because there weren't opportunities, just typically when there are opportunities, either guys in the wrong place or just makes the wrong read. There's the 70-yard touchdown to CD Lamb earlier in the season where Marshawn Lattimore actually has a great opportunity to make a play on the ball. He just plays it wrong. And because of the way that he plays it, he ends up not coming up with the interception and then also colliding with his teammate Quan Martin and leaving CD Lamb free to run into the end zone for a major score in that game. So, you know, it's kind of like the tale of two weaknesses, and the,
Yeah,
what is it, the movable object against the stoppable force, like which
right.
one of these things is going to turn into a strength on Sunday. Certainly that's something that Dan Quinn's going to be looking to try to force, and something that he's going to hope that his defense can be in position to take advantage of.
Yeah, I would be remiss from a matchup standpoint to not acknowledge the Marcus Mariota layer to this game, right? Where a lot of the rushing success from Washington last season was Jaden Daniels. Well, now you get
Yeah.
Bill Krosky Merritt and what he's bringing to the table. But Jaden Daniels still second on this team in rushing yards, and they've got some guys that can do some unique things that I'm sure Cliff Kingsbury is exploring more of what Debo Samuel in a special package could do, and Marcus
Mhm.
can run. And um, I think that for Miami, they were catastrophically bad the first 5-6 weeks of the season on early downs, as far as putting themselves in short second and third down situations. And as a
Mhm.
result, the third down defense was just absolutely atrocious. So whether that's through Bill Krosky Merritt, whether that's through Marcus in the passing game. I think Miami has to try to find a way to do what they were able to do with Buffalo, which was twofold. They got Buffalo away from running the football, and then they were able to keep Josh Allen in the pocket, where they had a
Yeah.
very good rush plan to minimize one of the things that Josh had torched the Dolphins for like 8 years now, which he always
Mhm.
gets outside and he hits that throw across his body. And I'm not comparing Marcus Mariota to Josh Allen, but the athlete level of the quarterback position there
Yeah.
is something that I don't think this team can afford to let Marcus get comfortable with and cook with, because if he does that, I think that's where you have the potential to get stretched and have miscommunications, because they have a bunch of guys on the back end. Um, and potentially give up some explosive plays that can flip fields and potentially yield the points.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think you hit the nail right on the head because if you look stylistically for the biggest difference between Marcus Mariota and Jaden Daniels, it's that when they become runners, they do it differently. Jaden a
Yeah.
lot of times likes to try to find the outside, usually to his right side. He's most comfortable out there, and tries to find an edge. And defenses have certainly caught onto that. They caught onto it during the season last year. They've only stayed, caught onto it this year, for lack of a better term, and it hasn't been as successful for him this year, even though he has had some opportunities. Marcus is very much a, put a foot in the ground and go, get north and south as fast as you can, and get going up the field. And it's kind of something we wish that, Jaden would kind of watch and learn from
Yeah.
Marcus a little bit more, is to be that decisive runner and just get north and south. But I think from a running back perspective, I think that, I think last week we saw a little bit of a shift in the ideology behind, Cliff Kingsbury. And I think some of it might be Dan Quinn forcing it on him. But I think you're going to see much more of a mixture of the three running backs for Washington this week. I think Chris Rodriguez Jr., I would expect him to probably get the start, in the sense that he's the first back on the field, right? To try to set that physical tone against that Miami Dolphins defense. And then Jeremy McNichols will be kind of that veteran stabilizer. And then they'll get Bill involved to be kind of that change of pace type of back. They had success earlier in the season. Actually, Corey Krosky Merritt, Bill, his breakout game against the Los Angeles Chargers, Chris Rodriguez was the back that started that game and got them kind of set with that physical tone. And then Bill was able to come in and kind of gash them. And I think that this running offense, this rushing game with the running backs has been at its best when they follow that blueprint. So like I said, they went back to that last week, and I think just from early comments from Dan Quinn this week, I think you probably expect a little bit of that come Sunday.
We will get into the keys to victory for each team, any predictions that we may have. We're going to get into all of that next here on this crossover Thursday. David Harrison, Locked On Commanders, Kyle Krabs, Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Today's crossover Thursday is sponsored by BetterHelp. As the days get shorter and the nights come earlier, it can start to feel a little heavier, especially when life is already packed with work, family, and everything else. This season, it's important to reach out and check in with friends, family, or even yourself, just like checking in on a teammate or connecting with someone that you haven't seen to lift your spirits. Reaching out for therapy can help make a real difference for you, too. BetterHelp makes that first step easier by connecting you with a licensed therapist online from wherever you are. Therapy is not just for when things are falling apart. It's about staying balanced and growing through the tough seasons. Over 5 million people have used BetterHelp. And with 30,000 therapists available, finding support really is just a few clicks away. This month, don't wait to reach out. Whether you're checking in on a friend or reaching out for a therapist yourself, BetterHelp makes it simple to take that first step. Listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon, because taking that step towards support might just leave you wondering, why didn't I do this sooner? Kyle Krabs, Locked On Dolphins. David Harrison, Locked On Commanders. Want to again thank everyone for helping to make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in all the land. David, keys to victory here for Washington. We usually roll with 3. Would love to hear your 3 keys to victory for the Commanders on Sunday, 9:30 a.m. kick, Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, I mean, for all the problems on defense, people are probably going to be surprised that 2 of my 3 keys are actually on the offensive side of the ball. So I'll start there. And I think it is that run game. Get that run game established. Like I said, I think, reading the tea leaves early here in the week, I think Chris Rodriguez is probably going to get the first shot at it. He's a very physical, between the tackles type of runner. Can do a little bit on the outside, but definitely more suited for, A gap, B gap type of runs, things like that. And just try to get big, try to get physical. You mentioned 6-man fronts for the Dolphins offensive line. The Commanders have had some success doing that as well, with their eligible linemen, stuff like that. So I think start off the game that way, and then again try to get them tired, deliver some of those body blows, and then maybe go for the home run later on in the game. And that's gonna require discipline. So the Washington Commanders, heavily penalized team, and the 2 penalties they're getting on are committing against themselves the most: false starts and holding on offense. And one thing that is a pet peeve of Dan Quinn's is holding calls on run plays, because he says he can almost understand a holding call on a pass play, especially with a mobile quarterback who's going to run each and every way, and you don't necessarily know which direction he's running all the time, things like that. But he does not understand and does not accept any holding penalties on run plays, because he doesn't feel like this should be part of the equation. So a lot of times, you kind of mentioned the Dolphins defense not being great in early downs. The Commanders will get down there, 2nd and 2, maybe a 3rd and 4, and a false start penalty or a holding penalty will set them back, and you end up punting. So they obviously can't do that. This offense has got to be able to produce to counterbalance what's going on with the defense. Now, on the defensive side, I would love to come out with some sort of go get 3 picks off of Tua, things like that. But try to be realistic here. And I think right now the best thing, Kyle, that you can ask for from a Commander's angle is just be in your position, right? Like, we know that the injuries obviously matter. And when you go from your starter to your backup, or your starter to your second backup, even in some positions, there's going to be a drop in talent. But if guys are in position and they're just getting beat, right? Like if a backup safety is in position and Jalen just makes a better play on a ball, or Tua just makes a better throw than where the coverage is, you can live with that to a certain extent. It's when there's not even a guy there. When you got a guy guarding grass, it's 4th and 4, and you got a guy 8 yards off the line of scrimmage guarding grass, and you got a receiver wide open 4 yards downfield. It's just kind of like, what are we really doing here? What's really going on here? So get those things cleaned up. If you get beat just because you get beat, fine. You know what I mean? But don't get beat because you're just out there lost.
Yeah. I think for Miami, the first one for me comes down to having a strategized plan for Deebo Samuel, where obviously I would expect with no Terry McLaurin, he's going to continue to have an elevated role. Miami as a team and a defense early in this season did not tackle well. And this is not the kind of cat that you want to come in half effort with your tackling, right? So that's the player for Washington from a personnel standpoint. that I would want to make sure that you have that pre-snap check and you always have that answer, so you are aware of what he is a threat to you to be on any given play. So I think that personnel matchup with how good he can be as a run after catch and after contact player, I think that's a critical thing for the Dolphins to be prepared for. One of the things that they did much more of and much more effectively this past week that I'd like to see them continue to do again is change the picture post snap. They had so many new players, like the whole secondary was brand new, and the vast majority of them were brought in July and August. So they didn't have a lot of time on task at the beginning of the season, where Anthony Weaver, with all the veterans that he had as the defensive coordinator last year running the defense, they did a very good job of presenting pressure threats and then dropping out and playing cover two and guys coming from untraditional areas to take those areas in the zones. And for Marcus, as a guy who's been around the league and has seen a lot, I don't just want to come out here and give vanilla presentations, because he's going to have an answer before the snap if you are always running what he thinks you're going to run. So be unpredictable post snap versus your pre-snap looks. And then I think the thing on offense that's going to be most important, I've got eyes on the wide receivers and tight ends to help set the wall and give Devon Achane some alleys in the run game. Because if you can get him outside the tackle box and allow him to stick his foot in the ground, that's where he is at his most effective. But you need the skill players to show up in a big way to help set those lanes to allow those explosive plays to happen.
Yep. No, absolutely. And I think that that's pretty much the blueprint right there that you just talked about, especially that run game on the perimeter, like we talked about.
Any final thoughts here as we get ready to wrap up this crossover?
No, I know both teams, in some ways things haven't gone the way they want them to, and more so I think for Miami than Washington right now in our current state. There's been some signs of life and things like that. But I think at the end of the day, the historic part of it, like no matter what, Dolphins fans, Commanders fans, your teams are the ones that were chosen to play the first ever NFL game in Spain, and that's pretty cool. And that's always going to be a little trivia question somewhere down the line. You'll be in some sports bar somewhere, and it'll be who played in or who won the first ever game played in Spain, and you'll know the answer because you're going to be tuned into it.
That's right. And we will make sure you are continuing to get the best coverage coming into this matchup. And after this matchup, David Harrison, Locked On Commanders, Kyle Krabs, Locked On Dolphins. It is your teams every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Make sure you hit subscribe. You can find us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We make it very easy for you to find us. And it's not just football, it's all of your favorite teams. That's what makes the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 podcast network for sports in all the land. And we appreciate each and every one of you for helping us acquire that title. That is going to do it for us on this Crossover Thursday. We appreciate you all for checking out the show. Enjoy the game on Sunday, and make sure you check out Locked On Commanders and Locked On Dolphins in the aftermath as we talk about how this game plays out.